Thanks for that. Tonight, we are going to be talking about home energy, but I just wanted to let you know that we do respond and assist congregations to address their facilities and their buildings on their campuses. So if that's something that interests you, please reach out to Brett or myself, Brett in the Northland, myself down here in the Twin Cities. We'll get you connected with resources that can provide you assistance in kind of getting your arms around your facilities and the different options for using your facilities to make climate change response. Here's some of our panelists tonight. Joining us tonight are a couple of members of our team from this summer, our UNC Civic Lab team. They're going to be talking. We'll have Gerardo Roca from the Home Energy Squad with the Center for Energy and the Environment. And our other panelists are homeowners themselves who have made these changes. You'll hear from Mike Overin and Lucy Greina, and you'll hear from Lee Schaefer. Lee's just back in from a trip out east, so it's great to see that your flight was on time, Lee, and you're back with us. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean when we're talking about home energy and what we're going to be addressing tonight. You know, the big picture, as we all know, I don't think there's probably anybody on this call that isn't familiar with the fact that we really need to change the way we do things. We need to go from a fossil carbon heavy intensive economy to a fossil free economy. And we need to cease burning carbon fuels as quickly as possible to address the harmful effects of climate change, the climate crisis, and global warming. One of the ways we can do that is to look at our own lives and look for, where do I have a relationship with carbon fuels? Where am I burning carbon fuels in my own life? And how can I build a plan to help wean myself off of that and get out of that economy? At MNIPL, we often talk about the reasons for doing this as being foundationally of justice. So our relationship with carbon fuels is connected to our relationship with one another and our relationship with the planet. It's all comprehensively one thing. So every time that I make a decision and movement in my life to eliminate carbon fuels in some aspect of my life, I'm stepping into a healthier relationship with the planet and a more just and moral relationship with my fellow human beings. Many of you have heard that Minnesota, thanks be to God, we passed this great bill back in 2023 that we're committed to making all of our electricity clean by 2040. So that means that anything in my home that I shift over to electricity, that's going to be totally clean by 2040, even if I myself am not producing that with clean energy sourcing, like a solar system or buying into renewable direct, say with one of my utilities. There's a lot of support out there right now. Many of you have heard about some of this. We're not going to get microscopic down to the detail level, but we are going to point out some of the great things that are available through the federal support, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act. The Inflation Reduction Act has the capacity to scale up to as much as $1 trillion worth of incentives. It kind of depends on how much we, the citizens and residents of the US, take advantage of those incentives. The more we take advantage of those incentives, the higher amount is dedicated towards clean energy. The Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, a little bit more direct grants and funding and loans to businesses to make changes. And out of that 1.2 trillion for infrastructure, 154 billion is directly connected to climate change response. So I point this out because a lot of us on this call and many of folks that we know worked really hard to lobby and campaign for people that we knew were going to make good decisions once they got in office. And we were fortunate they made those decisions, and we were able to pass these laws in 2022 and 2023. So we want to take advantage of those and show how beneficial they are. The federal money works like this. It comes from the EPA, Department of Energy, and the IRS. The EPA and Department of Energy money comes in the form of grants, most of those to the state, some of those directly to business and cities. And then the states have programs that either energize that money into key projects in the state or create it in the form of rebates over to homeowners and businesses. That rebate program is not quite up and running yet in Minnesota, but it's coming soon. The other federal money comes directly to each of us in the form of tax credits through, when we file our taxes and the credits that we can get. And we'll talk more about that tonight. There is state support. Oh, sorry, I'll just point out, here's an example of some of the federal tax credits that are available right now for specific implementations of things in your home. And we'll talk about how to get more information on that. State support, there is state money directly from the state of Minnesota, not necessarily administered through a federal program and not federal money. Some of that's administered, as I mentioned, through the IRA, through the state, but some of it's direct. It's from the state that's the state has set aside. There's also a green bank. We're very happy and proud to have gotten the green bank law passed in Minnesota. MNIPL did a lot of work on that. There's a lot of money available for that. And the MNCFA, the acronym for that green bank, that board is just finalizing their work this fall, and that money is already flowing to really important projects in the state. There's also utility support for Xcel Energy. Gerardo will talk a little bit about that tonight. And Brett, do you want to say something about what might be available in Minnesota Power?
Sure. Just real briefly, the Minnesota Power also has rebates available for some of the technologies that Buff was talking about, including heat pumps, and other utilities up in this area also are really getting on board. Even some of our rural co-ops are finding rebates for that kind of stuff. So yeah, exciting times.
So let's start turning it over to our panelists here. Our first panelist that we'll hear from are our UNC interns. And they have a digital audit tool that they built this summer. Anisha and Alex, do you want to come off mute and just talk a little bit about kind of how you built this project and what you found in your research? And we'll put that up on the screen here, and you can walk us through it. How's that sound?
Yeah, for sure. Well, hi everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Anisha, and I don't see Alex, but she's also here. Oh,
hi, I'm also here.
Yeah,
right.
We are 2 of 5 PT people who are part of the Moorhead Kane Scholarship at UNC, and we were sent this summer to Minnesota to work with MNIPL on the electrification issue. The Moorhead Kane is essentially a scholarship that incentivizes students to go expand their global perspective. So we all have an interest in climate change, but we are by no means experts in it. So when we came to MNIPL, it was by coming into the homes of people like Buff, of people like Brett, and seeing how they're implementing these tools in their home that really informed us of what this issue really looked like. And we all have a background in computer science. Pretty much our whole team, myself, Alex, Varun, Atef, and Alina, either are majoring in comp sci or data science. And we approach this issue from the idea of the whole audit process. Why can't it be done with computers? As we were going through people's homes, we asked them a lot about how they got into electrification. And the answer was often, oh, I did an energy audit. I put up this much money, and it's because I was passionate. But then we also heard the stories of people who are like, oh, I don't know exactly what an audit is. I don't know what electrification is. So I don't want to spend the money up front to pay for it. And so, yeah, it was the idea of us being computer people, but also being welcomed into people's homes in Minnesota that really birthed this idea of digitalizing the audit process. And that's how our tool was born. After talking to a bunch of local stakeholders, like other organizations in the area, people like Reverend Lee Schaefer. We writing dozens of lines of logic behind this tool. It was finally born, and we're very excited to show it to you all.
Great. You want to add anything to that, Alex?
Nope, Anisha summed it up better than I ever could have dreamed to hope to explain it. So
Well, it's great to see you guys again. It's fun to see you all again. Yeah, great. Just tell me what you'd like me to run through here, and I'll do a.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we can do a mock run through where
Yeah, great.
we
I'll
play
just.
around with the tool.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, and in case I wasn't clear before, the idea with this whole tool is we're taking what you would traditionally call up a company and get an in-person audit. We're moving a lot of that onto a digital platform. So you can answer questions on this app that will replace that and you can get a personalized output. But you'll see it in action, so it'll be a lot better. And yeah, we got some quotes from people around the area as to how electrification has helped them as well.
Great.
Yeah, so I guess the first place is pretty obvious. We ask for your name, just some general like that's funny. Some general questions about you that will really help inform how we go about recommending things to you. Buff, how are you going to fill this out from the perspective of Greta Thunberg?
Well, let's do a Greta Thunberg before she got climate active, which probably
Okay.
was at 2 years old, but we'll make that up. We'll pretend her parent, we're filling out for her parents.
I think it would be really fun also because it works with any combination of ideas if people just want to throw in the chat also things that they want us to click to see if maybe that's something that you have in your home, so you want to see what the recommendation would look like for that. But we can mix it up so it's not just one of us deciding.
You might have to shout things out to me because I've got so many
Yeah.
things opened on my
If anyone wants to just
desktop. I
unmute and
can't see the
shout out
chat right
something.
now.
Yeah, these aren't as clear. It'll be more fun when we get to the other ones. Yeah, if anyone wants to just shout out things, maybe that's their personal experience.
Yeah, so you can see that it's going to go through that. You can remember that graphic of the house a little earlier. It's going to go through each of those kind of portions of your house that you might have a relationship with carbon fuels.
Yeah, it touches on 5 main areas: your washer dryer, your heating, your water heating, your insulation, and your stove. And the idea is we handed off this product to MNIPL because they're the ones who have the best capabilities to keep it, but keep it going and keep adding to it. And so eventually that is ideally going to expand into more areas. But for example, this page, even though it's not labeled, is targeted towards insulation and heating.
So this is the kind of, we're just kind of going through and showing you some of the basic screens. What's really interesting, you can see some of the screens have some little bit of information in case the question is unclear. So for some of you who have showed up to this meeting, you know a lot about this already. You have some barometer or some. You probably wouldn't have shown up here if you didn't have some understanding a little bit to begin with. But I also want to lift up this tool that the scholars built because it's a really good introductory way of kind of getting other folks in your community, your neighborhood, your friend group interested in energy audits. And as Anisha and Alex said, this is a first step. It may not be quite as robust as people coming to your home and doing an energy audit, but it also doesn't require as much effort. And so it's a great way to reach out to people in your networks and say, hey, just check out this digital audit tool. It'll take you 15 minutes to fill out these. And it asks you all the right questions, and then it's going to provide you a PDF at the end that'll, kind of, so you can see here, the students have put, excellent information, so you don't have to wonder what these things are. You can go look in your attic or in your wall, see what they look like. I just think it's a great tool. So I won't go through the whole, the entire thing, but I just wanted folks to see that it's free. As Anisha said, they've shared the tool with us. So MNIPL is hosting it now. We may from time to time update it as we get new information about the rebates and tax credits and whatnot, and we'll hopefully continue to build on their work and make it more and more robust. I also want to just say, Anisha and Alex, you guys, these folks had unbelievable level of detail behind all of this. They graphed this. What was that tool that you all used?
It's whimsical. It's a flow chart.
Whimsical. So if you can imagine a on-screen digital whiteboard where they mapped all these different questions out and the various answers that could be done and where it would all go, they built this unbelievable flow chart that if it was big enough to actually read, like on a real whiteboard, it would have been, I don't know, 100 yards long. It was really pretty impressive. So I want to just say thank you a ton. Also, I just want to acknowledge that these scholars come from a community of folks that are on scholarship at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and they had they're many scholars. They're maybe as many as 200 had a death at the foundation this weekend, and so it just means so much to me that you guys came tonight and made time for this, and we really appreciate all the work you gave MNIPL this summer. So
Thank you, Buff.
you bet.
Thank you.
All right, let's you will receive a link for this in the follow-up email, so you don't have to keep up with that right now, and we will move back to the slide deck and turn it over to our home energy squad representative. Are you on the call, Gerardo?
I'm here.
Okay, good. Okay, hold on just a minute and I'll get that queued up for us. Let's see. We do have a couple of other digital tools I'll be sending out. Rewiring America has some helpful calculators and planners that'll kind of direct you to what federal money is available and how much your income level will qualify you for. And EnergyStar.gov is also a good digital tool. So those are good to pair with this digital audit that the students built. But once you kind of get to the next step for auditing, after you've tried the digital audit tool and you want to move on to the next step, Center for Energy and Environment in the Twin Cities area in the Excel territory is a great option. And that's why I asked Gerardo to be with us today. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Buff. So just a quick about Home Energy Squad. We are a program provided by Excel Energy and CenterPoint. We are pretty much available to anyone that has either one of those two providers. So if you have Excel for either energy or gas or both, you qualify. Or if you have Excel or a CenterPoint in any other, either Excel or any other power provider, you can also qualify for this program. It is currently available to anybody, but starting next year, it'll be a different provider depending on what county you're in. But it is currently it's being provided by the Center for Energy and Environment. The Home Energy Squad program kind of came up through the Minnesota Conservation Improvement Program to help the utilities meet their annual energy saving goals. And we've been providing the Home Energy Squad program here at CEE since 2010 for Excel and Centerpoint. So this program is available to, like I said, anybody that has either one of those two programs or any of those two utilities that lives in a 1 to 4 unit home. So, single family home, a duplex, triplex, fourplex, it's available. If it's a condo with multiple units, it gets a little tricky. We might still be able to accommodate you, but our auditors are mostly trained for like single family or up to 4 unit housing. But we also do help renters. You don't have to be the homeowner. So if you or somebody you know really is interested in it, but they're like, oh, I don't want to get my landlord involved, we can do it. We just need to get the landlord involved to make those improvements if we find any improvements that need to be made. So what we do in an audit, we install energy saving products and we kind of go over all the different areas where we can help save energy. And I kind of go a little bit more in depth, but main thing that we look at is your attic insulation, because attic is usually where most of the energy is lost in a house. As we all know, heat rises. So we really want to keep that attic insulated. So we get the least amount of heat loss through the attic. So we'll go into the attic and check and make sure that you have the right type of insulation, that you have insulation in there to start with. A lot of older homes, it's just newspaper that's thrown about the attic and they call that insulation. So we'll make sure that you actually have insulation and that you have the proper level of it. It's up to code. And if it's not, we'll let you know. And then we'll help you with the next steps to go about to getting that insulated up to code. We'll also check the walls, make sure that the walls are also insulated. A lot of older homes still have empty cavities on the exterior walls. And we'll run a blower door test. What that blower door test, like you see on the picture, what that does is we put that big fan on the front door and we try to blow as much air out of the house. And that change in air pressure lets us know where there's leaks coming into the house. And we'll let you know, how much air is getting leaked into the house. And we'll also, if the weather allows us, we'll do a infrared photos of where we see the leaks. I say if the weather allows us, in order to get a precise infrared picture, we need a temperature difference of 20 degrees between the outside and the inside of the house. So seems like we're starting to get pretty good weather for infrared pictures coming up here. So, if it's 30 degrees outside and your house is heated to 65 degrees, 67 degrees, perfect. We can definitely do the infrared pictures. So we'll let you know. And some of the materials that we'll put in immediately to help you save energy, the high efficiency aerators and shower heads. Those really help with gas. The least hot water you use, the least amount of gas that you're using. I'm kind of hoping that everybody here now has all LED light bulbs, but just in case you have a straggler incandescent bulb, we'll swap it out for an LED bulb. And also check the attic hatch and the door weather stripping. I know it's a little intimidating to switch out the weather stripping on the door because you have to kind of cut it and screw it on yourself, but we'll do it. Our auditors have done it like a couple times a day, so they're pretty good at doing it pretty quick. And we'll check the attic hatch, make sure that attic hatch is also properly weather stripped. That's also another area where we might get leakage. You might have a pretty decently isolated attic, but if that attic hatch is not properly weather stripped, then you're getting heat loss through the attic hatch itself. And we'll see if we can get you a programmable or a smart thermostat. The those kind of depends on the heating system. If it allows us to do it, we'll do it, but we just kind of make sure that your heater has the proper wiring for us to put in a new thermostat. So really the main benefit of doing a home energy squad visit is to make your home more comfortable and saving money on energy, and also having that peace of mind that you have an efficient home with a basic level of efficiency. And we also have something called the Energy Advisor Service. So I thought I saw somebody in the chat asking about follow-up. So the audit itself is kind of the first step of 3 steps. So first step would be doing the visit. Second step would be connecting to the auditing or the advising service. So we'll get all the data from the visit. We'll get the amount of air movement that goes through the house. We'll get those numbers from the blower door test. We'll get the the age of your heating system and your air conditioning system. We'll get the insulation in the attic. We'll see with the material and how much of it is present, and we'll also get the information on the walls. And all of that is going to come in a report that we'll have at the end of the visit, and the auditor will go through it and let you know, the areas of importance, and it kind of gives you a score based on all those numbers from 0 to 100. 100 being your house is perfect, you don't need to do any work. 0 is you're living with the windows open in the winter. And then the auditors or the advisors will take that data and make suggestions on it. So we'll help you find a contractor. If you need to put insulation in the attic, we'll write the quote for that, and then we'll follow through all the steps in the process, make sure that it's getting done and you're getting a good price for it. And we'll let you know, like, hey, this is how much the contractor is going to cost you. This is how much money you can get from the utilities as a rebate after you do the work. And this is what you qualify from the state or the federal government on rebates or tax credits that are available for doing all this work. So it's really useful if you really think that you need to get some work done. We'll do a lot of that heavy lifting for you to make sure that you're actually getting it done and you actually are finding somebody. We have contractors that we've vetted and that we work with and that we are super comfortable with. And we'll suggest one of those contractors for you. And then the last step is making sure that all the work is done and see that you get your rebates at the end of all the work. So we'll see that your rebates get through and then make sure that you're all good to go. And speaking of those rebates, I do have some of that information here. So if you like to get a new heating system, there's rebates available through Excel, up to $400. If you like to get a rebate on a new AC, it's up to $400 with Excel again. Or if you're interested in getting a heat pump, they really bumped up those rebates this year. You can get up to $2,000 on rebates from Excel for getting one of those. So
and those are in addition or over and above with the federal tax credits, or
yes,
right?
Yep. So they're in addition to what the tax credits are. So this is just purely from the utilities. So and it's they do take into account like the cost of the labor too in there, but I mean up to $2,000 for a new heat pump, that sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
So the big question probably is, how much is this gonna run? So we do have 2 different tiers. So we have the one where we don't really recommend for newer houses. So if you have a newer house and you just want to make sure that your builder followed all the codes, just for a little bit of peace of mind. That visit usually runs $70. The main thing that we don't do on that one is we don't do the blower door test. We're pretty sure with newer homes that there's not a whole lot of leaks, but we do check the insulation in the in your heating system. And then we have the full visit, which is $100, where we check the blower door test, and we do all the other diagnostics, the attic check, the wall check, the heating and air conditioning check. We do all that, and it's $100. That's the base price. We do have a discount for MNIPL. So if whenever you're trying to sign up for a visit, just put in MNIPL on the promo code area, and then you get a 30% discount on the visit. So instead of being $100, it's down to $70 for a full audit on your system and access to the advisor service. So
Thanks.
It's a whole package that you get for only $70. So if you are interested in signing up for one, I'll put the link to our website where you can sign up for a visit in the chat. If I can,
Great.
Put it in there. And then we also have partner cities throughout the metro where you get an additional discount for living in one of those partner cities. We have about 23 partner cities. Big ones being Minneapolis, Minnetonka, Bloomington, Edina, Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, Wayzata, Roseville. Not St. Paul, unfortunately. They're not a partner city yet, but each city has their own discount. It would take about half of the presentation if I told you each city and their discount, but I'm gonna put that link in there too to see if you live in one of those cities, and what sort of discount you qualify on top of the coupon for the 30% off. So I see there are some questions here in the chat.
You want to pitch those to him, Brett?
Yeah, I think we've been able to answer some of them in the chat. I think one that was a really good question we haven't answered yet is someone mentioned that they had a home energy audit 8 or 10 years ago, and they're wondering when it's appropriate to get a new audit, when and if it's appropriate to get a new audit.
Yes, so definitely get a new audit. A lot of those federal tax credits through the Inflation Reduction Act require you to have a home energy audit within the last 3 years. And definitely 8 to 10 years is kind of a good time to make sure that everything's still running. In those 10 years, some of the insulation might have settled on the walls, or if you still have the same water heater or furnace or air conditioning, it might be time to check and make sure that they're good candidates to be replaced. So for example, if you want to get a heat pump and we see that your air conditioning needs to be replaced, but your water heater is still in good shape, that would be an excellent opportunity to get a heat pump, because you still have that heater as a backup, but the air conditioner needs to get replaced. So yeah, it's definitely a good idea to get a new audit.
Thank you. And another question just came in. Looks like Rick says, is it financially advisable to wait for anticipated state of Minnesota incentives coming? I think probably the rebates he's talking about coming in the spring, or should I act on a heat pump now?
If you can wait, if it's not urgent, to replace that air conditioning or heating system, I would say probably wait. But if it's, and also it's the summer's over, so unless you really want that heat pump for heat, it's I'll probably wait. But it kind of depends on your situation on on where you're at with your current system. But, and then I see that other half, we do have a list of contractors for heat pumps too. I know a lot of contractors are still kind of iffy about heat pumps, but we do have a list of contractors that work with heat pumps. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, that's a really good resource. It's the Minnesota Air Source Heat Pump Collaborative. He's sort of the curator of that, facilitator, and I send people to that all the time. So these are contractors that commit to ongoing education, standards, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really great state resource. Yeah.
They're awesome.
I think there was one final question at the beginning I didn't really have a good answer for. They wanted to know that we're going to replace some windows. They want to know if there are incentives and rebates for that. I know some of the tax credits apply somewhat to window replacement, but I wonder if you have any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, there are incentives for window replacements. The windows are kind of like our last recommendation, just because they're the most expensive and kind of least effective when it comes to weatherization and electrification. So we do have some resources for that. During the audit, we can kind of check. I know a lot of times it's kind of tricky with windows if it's the actual window that's leaky or if it's the trim that's leaky. If it's the trim that's leaky, we can kind of let you know. If during the blower door test, that's kind of one of the things that we can check during it. And if it's an older window, we can kind of tell you like, hey, it's the channel. If it's like a pulley window, if that channel of the pulley is like not filled in, or there's a lot of things that we can test during the blower door test around the window, because there's different parts depending on the age or the type of window where it could be fixed without having to get a whole new window. So and then we'll let you know, and then we'll let you know fixes for them. It could be as easy as just filling in that channel, or just putting some caulking around the trim, and then you don't have to get invest thousands of dollars in a new window. So
thank you.
Yep.
Great. Thanks so much, Gerardo, and so much for all that Home Energy Squad does. Again, everybody will send out the links that Gerardo shared with us in the follow-up email. Remember, you can get 30% off. It's a really good value. I've had it done in my home, which is 1950s home. Super helpful. So thank you all so much for that. There are options if you're outside of Xcel Energy Territory or CEE. They may be a little harder, less clear, and not quite as streamlined, but Brett can help you with some of those. I can help you find those also. You want to say anything about that, Brett, before we move on?
Yeah, just real briefly, there was a great question asking if, there are kind of these utility rebates, incentives in other parts of the state outside of Xcel. And the good answer to that is yes, absolutely, because the reason all these incentives are there, rebates from utilities, is because there's a state law that mandates that utilities have to save a certain amount of energy each year. So they're not doing this just out of the goodness of their heart. They're mandated to do this. And so all the utilities in the state, all the energy utilities, even gas utilities on the small side, they provide these kind of utility incentives. So if you are in a rural co-op, another utility outside of Xcel or CenterPoint, you look up that utility, look under conservation SIP program or eco program, and there are lots of incentives there. The flip side of that is energy auditors are actually fairly hard to get in parts of greater Minnesota. So if you're looking for an energy auditor, we think it's a great foundational step that everyone should be able to do. And that is changing. We're finally seeing more auditors come on board, and we'd be happy to try and help you with that. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Brett. I see some other questions in the chat. I think our next couple of panelists may answer some of those as they go through their stories with us. But we will have some time right at the end for to catch up any of those that didn't get answered. So thanks so much, Lucy and Mike, for being with us. and I'll move your slides through for you. So you just let me know and tell us. We're excited. Tell us your story.
Well, thank you. I'm Mike. This is Lucy.
Hi.
And I was going to say thank you to Buff and to Reverend Schaefer, but also to Anisha and Alexandra and Gerardo.
The work you're doing is really fantastic.
Yep.
I really like that digital audit tool just to get people started, because we talk to people a lot about energy efficiency and electrification. And, you know, it's really nice for somebody to just sit down and start figuring out a little bit on their own what they need to do with their home in the big picture. Knowing how old that furnace is and when it might need to be replaced is really important in planning for making your home energy efficient.
Yep. So we did it backwards because we're notorious for doing this. And somebody asked on the chat about solar. So we have friends that are early adopters that we have to keep up with. So we put solar in to begin with, which is backwards. But put an array in on the right in 2018, and that was enough to cover our lights, TV, fridge, stuff like that, but not heating or hot water. And went to the tax preparer and got a tax credit and said, boy, that was pretty fun. Let's do it again. So next time we did it on the left with panels that were made on the Iron Range by Heliying. The ones on the right are from China. And so now we make about 2.5 times more energy for our all-electric home than we use in a year. So we sell back more than half of what we use. And that's not necessarily the smartest way to do it, but nobody ever accused me of being smart. So
the other reason that we didn't get our home energy efficient first and then put the panels on is that we were a little paralyzed with fear about what the status of our home was.
sure.
We could see dry rot, we could see the dams. I think maybe the next slide will show what kind of state our home was in. There we go. And we really didn't know if this home could be saved. That was that was how bad things were. It was so drafty in there with the old windows, poor insulation, that really what we needed was the home energy audit to help guide us. So that online tool might have been great at the time. This was back in 2019. Or just knowing that energy auditors should come to your home to help you assess it. But fortunately, we do have a friend. I think she's featured on the next slide.
Yeah. And so
there she is.
This is Rachel Wagner, and she's an energy efficiency home designer. She's really working a lot to up the game in the whole industry. Lives in Duluth here, pretty close by to where we are in Two Harbors. And she came out and did the energy audit, and she said, your home that was hand built in 1965 leaks energy like a sieve, but it's got good bones and we can save it if you want to. And we said, we like the place, we like the house, and we don't know exactly how much we spent on this project because it was a chaotic time of COVID and we were working our tails off in our practice as veterinarians. And so we didn't keep track of the numbers. I know Reverend Schaefer is going to have much better numbers than we do, but we do know that we rebuilt the home for less than we would have paid to build a brand new one. And so on the next slide, this is the conditions that were going on underneath the surface. And the insulation was bad. It was inadequate. A lot of the old siding had wood rot, and the insulation that was in place wasn't in very good shape. So she had Rachel just outlined 3 main goals. She said, we're going to stop the leaks, and we're going to put a new envelope all the way around your home to make it energy efficient. And then finally, we're going to replace the HVAC system, the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning with a new energy efficient cold climate air source heat pump system. And so next slide, please. And go ahead.
Here's the new envelope after this old siding was taken off. And what you can see is that really we added on the insulation was the nail board, was what our contractor called it, but it's structurally integrated panels. So it's several inches of foam between the pressed kind of a plywood product, and it just gets tacked on to the old frame. And so the old insulation is inside of that, and this is adding on an extra width of insulation all the way around our home. So we had bigger, fatter walls when we were done.
Exactly. And so, before that, the attic was cleaned out. All the old insulation was taken out. New wiring was put in. New electrical panel was put in. Then new insulation went over the wires, the squirt-in foam that sealed up every nook and cranny, and then fluffy cellulose on top of that. That made a really, really solid attic. Inside the house, every single hole in the ceiling was plugged. We had lots of can lights. All of those holes were plugged before the insulation was put in. And that stopped all the leaks up into the attic. All the old windows were taken out and the doors, and they were replaced with new energy efficient triple panes. And so starting with the insulation and the whole new envelope around the outside of the house turned this into a very energy efficient structure.
We also had a double-sided fireplace, and Rachel really wanted us to get rid of it. But when the mason came out to give us a quote on taking that out, he said, "Why would you do that? This is beautifully built." And we did like the fireplace, so we bricked up one side of it and then put an insert into it so that it is energy efficient. And it serves as a backup heating source if our power does go out.
Yep. Next slide, please. And so we took out the old off-peak electric furnace and off-peak electric water heaters that we had. They were taken out and replaced with air source heat pumps, one on each end of the house. One of them on the one on the bottom left picture shows a mini split that feeds the two bigger rooms in the house. And then we have 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms that are heated with the other air source heat pump. It's a cold climate air source heat pump that had ducting put in a false ceiling. And so when you finish it all off, what you do is you take a house that used a heck of a lot of electricity, and we essentially cut it in half. We dropped it by 40% from before to after. It's absolutely comfortable now. Those air source heat pumps cover us all the way down, even when it gets to 25 below. And so we are able to have a nice, comfy home, and that's the story.
It's absolved a lot of guilt too. Watching all that, feeling all that heat go out of the house, and we had snow that was melted around the perimeter of the house from all the heat loss in the past. It really, really does make us feel good that we are living in a home that is working the way it should and is keeping us comfortable and is very green.
Yeah, and the Inflation Reduction Act happened after we did our project. We couldn't make use of it, but essentially every single thing that we did would have been helped with the Inflation Reduction Act. And so use it. And the Inflation Reduction Act is going to be in place until 2032 or even later, potentially. So it's going to be there long-term for folks to make use of. So I know that Reverend Schaefer is ready to make his presentation, and I think that took us through all of our slides, I believe. Thank you. And we'll be happy to answer questions too.
And just to make sure, I think you said this at the beginning, but did you tell folks where you live, where the house is?
Oh. Well, we live in the Great North Woods near Lake Superior in Two Harbors, Minnesota, half an hour north of Duluth, where Brett Pence is. So,
all right. So, and the air source heat pump has been sufficient for your heating needs?
Yep, it has. We have backup electric heat that they asked us to put in as an emergency if it gets too cold for the air source heat pumps. But honestly, in the 4 years since we did this, we have never, ever used them.
Wow. That is impressive.
Yeah, and it's the envelope, you know? Gerardo will tell you it's the envelope.
Yeah, it's all about the envelope.
Yeah, saves a lot.
Yeah, it
That's
really-
great. Well, gosh, thanks so much. What a great project. And kudos to you for doing this before there were all those tax credits and incentives in place. So
Yeah, we wanted to save the money for you folks.
well, that's great. Well, thank you. I hope you can stay on in case there are some questions after Lee gives his presentation. But
Sure.
great presentation. Thanks again. Wonderful. And thanks for all your support of MNIPL up in the Arrowhead.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you.
All right, Lee, welcome. You want to talk a little bit about your house?
Yeah, love to. Let's see, get that done. All right. This was built in, I believe, 49 or 47. It's wasn't the best as far as, like, you know, with the energy audit and all, but I had to start somewhere, and began with the C&E energy audit because I figured I needed to decide, you know, how to approach it. I should maybe switch back a little bit. I did do about 16 solar panels, got an EV, got an EV charger. That's all in the stuff about, I think it's like 1,500 for a solar panel, per solar panel that I paid out. 28 grand for the EV Volt, Chevy Volt, and about $1 grand for the charger. And I highly recommend, if you're going to do a fair bit of driving, to get a charger. It is so convenient at night. I just plug that baby in and I'm good to go the next morning fully charged. And, you know, I get between, in winter, when it's nasty out, 225 range. And in the summer, I'll get close to 300 or more range. And I never, you know, if I'm just driving around town, going to the grocery store, maybe going down to Northfield to visit my girlfriend's mother or whatever, I always have plenty of energy, or if I'm working somewhere in town. So, like I say, I highly recommend that. A quick note on EV chargers. The fast charging takes an hour to get it up to about 85% charged. And there's some free in the state. There's some that cost money. Generally, it probably costs close to what you'd pay for a tank of gas, basically, to charge your car fully. Then the overnight charger takes about 8-9 hours, which is what I have to get. That's from, you know, basically no charge to fully charged. So anytime overnight, you figure that's 8-9 hours. I don't care how little I have, it'll be fully charged the next day. The other option is just plug it into your wall. That takes about 57 hours. And so if I'm up in the cabin, say, and that's all they got, I can plug it in. If I'm going to be there for a couple of days, that works as well. Or you got to find chargers in the area. But in any case, those are quickly the 3 types of chargers you'll run into for an EV. I have found that it is challenging. Excuse me?
Lee, let me just interrupt you for just a minute because we're going to get to that. I organized your slides, and if I could just introduce at the top level, kind of the summary. Lee provided me some figures here, and you can see kind of the overall, all the different things that Lee implemented came to right around 117,000. If you kind of look at the anticipated savings over about 15 years, you're going to see kind of direct savings of close to 75,000. And so if you look at those two things together, you know, for all these different changes that Lee was able to make, and he can go into some details here in a minute with the other slides, you know, he had a net total output of about 42.5. But some of those things, you know, are you can reasonably say he would have to make some of those choices anyway. For instance, he would have to buy some kind of vehicle. So perhaps you could say, you know, he maybe saved, you know, he would have spent close to 22,000 on a vehicle instead of 28. And he would have to buy a new roof, whether he got electricity or not, electrical, you know, and solar or not. And, you know, he might have to replace appliances across that 15-year interval, whether he went all electric or not. and he'd have to do something about his heat, so maybe he spent, a little bit more on a heat pump than he did a regular. So if you categorize all those costs, it's a pretty much a break even over a 15-year spread. And I hope I understood your figures correctly, Lee, that you sent me. But as I kind of looked at your numbers and did those, that was kind of the top level picture that you drew for me with those figures.
Absolutely, that's right on. You got it.
Oh,
So
good.
go to the next slide.
Yeah.
All right, there's the hybrid on your left, water heater. On the right is the heat pump. They work beautifully well. I love my hybrid water heater. It's supposed to cost, I believe, something like $1,800 over its lifetime. It will save that much energy. So it's, for me, it was a good investment. And the heat pump, I use heat strips to back up. And I needed those heat strips, unfortunately, from time to time. But it's getting warmer, like it or not. Last year, I believe the coldest it got was 15 below zero. And so, I use heat strips occasionally, but basically, the heat pump does most of the work. It does all the work, of course, in summer. No problem there. And I use less energy in the summer than I create. So I'm actually making money in the summer from, say, probably April through October, and then in those months in the winter, I lose some money, but it breaks pretty close to even. So next slide.
Yeah, I see a question in the chat, or what is a heat strip? A heat strip is a resistance style electric heating. So it's not near as efficient as a heat pump, and it may ultimately cost more in electricity than methane gas does at the present time, but it's just there for a backup. And so as you heard, Mike and Lucy haven't had to use theirs at this stage because their envelope is so well tight, and Lee's had to use his a few times. Yep.
Right, that's it. Okay, and there's the car and the stuff about, the one screen, how much range I get, the electric motor and the charger.
And which style charger is this, Lee? This is
for 9 hours.
9-hour charger. Okay.
Right, I didn't need one because I figured I got overnight. Once I get home, I just plug it in the next morning, fully charged. And if you don't drive much, you may not even need that. If you drive, 30, 40 miles, you probably just plug it into the wall normally, and that would do it. But like I say, I like the ability to charge it right up if I'm driving a fair bit.
Sure, right.
All right. And there are the solar panels, and I have them on both sides of my house and then both sides of the garage. There's the new fuse box, which I really like. I think that's a real plus upgrade. They've got all the different sources for energy coming in from my solar panels to the new heat pump and electric water heater, my induction range, etc. And that was $4,500. Next. Actually for 1,800, the 1,800 plus installation, I did that through MSP, and they charged me for the heat pump and the installation of that, because I bought that separately from Home Depot. It was on sale, and I just sitting in my basement till I could get it installed. I'm cheap. When I saw it, I thought it was, I don't remember how much off, but I thought, hey, that's worth getting it. And you're right, it was relatively cheap. I don't know, like I say, how much specifically that cost to install. And then as another thing, I got rid of my gas dryer, put in a brand new electric nifty difty dryer, which is crazy. I mean, as far as being new and automated, I'm not, anyway. And then I've got an induction on the right stove, and I'm still learning how to use that. That has an air fryer. It's got convection oven. I mean, it's got all kinds of nifty things going with it. And then the induction on top. You have to have special pans that are magnified. In other words, you need a magnet, make sure the pan will keep the magnet solidly in place to use. And it makes kind of a whirring noise, but I really like the fact there's no gas fumes. Don't have to worry about leaving something on, because if you're not using it, it automatically goes off in a few minutes. If you don't put a pan on there, it won't go on. So that's kind of cool, given that mine a little bit not always, shall we say, careful about doing things like that when I had a gas. Then the middle slide is on the top, the snow blower, and bottom is the lawnmower, both electric. I love the fact I don't have to buy gas, don't have to worry about throwing it all out in the fall, don't have to worry about changing the oil, don't have to worry about starting the doggone things. I put a battery in it and they start every single time, whether it's 100 below zero or 100 above zero, they just simply work. And I love the fact that Eagle makes batteries that are interchangeable. So I can use the same battery in my lawnmower as I use in my snowblower. I need 2 batteries for the snowblower. And so in the summer, I just make sure that I just switch out my batteries and just, charge them up and away I go. And Eagle's a wonderful brand, highly recommended. Next slide.
Well, that covers the slides you had for your house.
Right.
I remember talking to you, well, must have been 4 years ago now when you started doing this. And from what I remember, you kind of went through a process similar to the one on the screen here, but you kind of built a plan. Over how many years did it kind of take you to implement all these, Lee?
Wow, I first got my electric lawnmower back in probably maybe 12. And then that was when I was in Noblesville. When I got here, I just started using, like in 2020, I put on the first 8 solar panels. 21, I put another 8 solar panels, bought a car in 2020 and put in the charger in 2020. So just little over time, bit and bit. I finally finished this past January when I got the stove and the dryer installed.
Wow. And did you have to take out a loan for any of that, or?
Thank you. I did. I got a CE&E loan of $20,000 interest free. And that really made a difference. It's for 10 years. I paid $166 a month. And I find that's very affordable. And like I say, it's interest free, so there's no rush in paying it off. They also, as Gerardo pointed out, did an energy audit for me and helped me figure out about getting insulation done before I got a heat pump, putting in a new roof before I got solar panels. So as the roof wears out, you don't want to have to take everything off and put it all back on again.
Right.
On the side, right now, solar shingles are not a thing. They're being developed, but last I checked 6 months ago, they still aren't on the market, but we'll see.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Lee, for going through that. Lee and Mike and Lucy are available for questions. If you have questions that fit for Brett or myself, we're glad to answer those. Thank you very much to our panelists for being here and preparing all the photos and the slides and everything to help us visualize this. You guys did a great job. Really appreciate it. So anybody, you can drop a question in the chat if you like, or you can just come off mute and ask your question. I welcome anybody to.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Mike. I was going to say Mary has a good question in here about heat pump water heater. She says $1,800 for the heat pump water heater. Did that include installation? Mine was a lot more expensive. Who did you use? So more questions on heat pump water heaters. I think that's directed at Lee, perhaps.
Okay. Like I said, I wasn't sure about the installation. I didn't know if Lucy or you guys have any ideas about how much yours. hot water heater.
That's one thing we don't have is a heat pump water heater in our home. We have a conventional new one that's well insulated.
Yeah. But it's still a good idea.
Sounds like we don't have any specific answers for you, Mary. I think the one thing to say is there are a lot of options now for heat pump water heaters, whereas even a year ago there weren't as many. So there's a wide range of prices on that. So you should definitely do some shopping and look at the Energy Star in particular that shows all the products that are there. So recommend that. There are also some water heaters, heat pump water heaters now that plug right into a 120 outlet. You don't have to put a 240 outlet in there. So there are lots of new options there.
One thing I was going to add too was that I watched a presentation from Gerardo's colleague Joe Olson at CEE, and I asked her specifically, are there any homes that you encounter when you go to really old homes that need a lot of help? Do you ever find ones that are just too far gone to really help? And she said, it's very, very rare. So no matter how bad you think it might be, don't lose faith. It can happen.
That's good advice.
Here's another question. Really good question. Was it obvious? This could be either one of our guests. Was it obvious what order to do things in? Do you think the order of events is really important? So.
Oh yeah, I think the order of events is very important, having done it completely backwards. So, you know, speaking from experience, if we had an energy audit to begin with, then we could have prioritized what we really could get the most bang out of our buck for and started the project way before we finally did in 2019. But it was just so overwhelming to us what we needed to do to fix the house that we didn't do anything. So starting with that energy audit from Gerardo or somebody else is just the really best place to begin.
Absolutely. And I'll just finish by saying that we had a contractor, we didn't have the IRA, we didn't have limits on how much financial help we would get with each item. So we just said, do it, just get it done. And he got it done in a year. He was an exceptional individual.
Wow. That's great.
Anything to add to that at all? Order of things? Or?
I would just simply agree with them and say that again, the energy audit helped me kind of prioritize things as well. And I had to do it bit by bit because I just didn't have the resources. I moved back here in 2019 and was just divorced. So I was piecing together my money and that, and also I am a retired minister, so I get a housing allowance. I could use that, the money I was spending toward my housing allowance, that's tax-free. So that saved me some money that way too.
And I'll add one more thing. If you've got a perfectly good water heater, you don't have to rip it out and replace it. You can let it last its life. As I said, you have till 2032 before you have to worry about the program ending. So it is smart to look at the appliances in your heating and cooling system and say, this is the one that's the oldest or the one that's most rickety, and we're going to target that one first, and then do them kind of in order. The other thing to be aware of too is that we've had friends that have wanted to put air source heat pumps in the middle of the winter when their furnace died, and they ran into problems with that. So planning to try to get that kind of an upgrade done during the warmer months of the year is a good idea.
Amen. Yes.
Yeah, good point.
Good.
Yeah, that's the thing that the energy audit really helps with is the planning ahead. So you don't have to make decisions in an emergency crisis situation. Yeah. Go ahead, Brett.
Well, I was just going to add, there's more good questions. Put another one to the crowd. This is one near and dear to my heart. What's the best way to make sure you're maximizing rebates or other incentives? Any thoughts from our guess here?
Oh,
Wait until the IRA was passed. That would be a good one.
my daughter actually was on the Senate, is on the Senate Finance Committee and helped get the IRA passed. And so
Wow.
she actually helped write the bill and got it over the finish line. But I would say one of the problems is it's just still, it's not, even though it's passed, they're still implementing. And that's one of the frustrations too, is, you know, the state still hasn't figured everything out yet. They're still trying to figure out how to dovetail what the feds do, what they do, and make it work for the homeowners.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's a lot of information out there. It can be overwhelming about what's available to you wherever you live in your particular situation. There are state rebates, there are utility incentives, there are federal tax credits, there are rebates on the way, and it's very difficult to make sense of it in some ways. I really like the Rewiring America has that calculator that was referred to earlier, where you can plug in your own situation and it can at least tell you in general at the federal level what you should be looking at. So I think that's a good place. And then everyone already mentioned it, but an energy audit, you know, a good energy auditor typically has his pulse on what's available. He or she has their pulse on what's available in your region. So that energy audit is another great place to kind of pick up that information. One quick question.
Go ahead.
Hybrid heat pump. They want to know, Lee, you had mentioned you have a hybrid heat pump. And the question is, what is that?
Well, that's something that uses like a refrigerator. Well, it has chemicals that use the air. I ain't a scientist, so help me here if I'm not sure exactly how all this stuff works, but my understanding is it takes the radiant air, which is why they only can heat air that's so, let's say 25 below zero, and take enough heat out of it to extract it, to heat up this chemical that then in turn gets pushed through your house to heat the house up. And then once it loses its energy, it goes back outside, gets more of the air, ambient air, and then brings it back in again. It's a reverse of, say, AC, but that's my very basic knowledge.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. I think that was a good description of how a heat pump works in general. And I think the question here is, what is a hybrid heat pump water heater? What is that? And I believe the hybrid is a heat pump water heater is a water heater that has a heat pump that moves heat from inside your house into the water, and also has electric resistance heating if you need to bump that up if you're in a time where you're pulling a lot of water. You have teenage boys like I do, and they're pulling from the shower all the time. So,
Right.
Yes, that makes sense, Brad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, that does make sense. I don't have that. I just have me, and I have like a 60-gallon tank, so it rarely. Yes, now that makes sense. You have to have electric backup.
Yes, not all households use the same amount of energy. It depends on the
Amen.
different creatures living in your house, including teenagers. So, another question is, do you need to have a 220-volt circuit for an induction range? Pretty specific. I think I can answer this one. The answer is pretty much yes. At this point, there are a few exceptions now coming out with, believe it or not, induction ranges with batteries in them, so that you could just plug the induction range into a 120 outlet, and then when you call for electricity, the battery supplies that. So those are still pretty expensive, but I think that's just indicative of how quick things are changing. If we have this in another year from now, those might be out and more widespread and more affordable. So it is pretty amazing. Anything to add, Lee or Mike, Lucia?
Yes, I definitely do. Because when I worked with MSP, that is something they did not add into my cost. All of a sudden, I had, I think, $4,500 for a new fuse box. They said, oh goodness, guess what? You've got this, adding on a electric dryer, electric induction range. Oh, and your water heater, and then your heat pump, and then all your solar panels, and you're going to need that. So suddenly it was another $4,500. So that is something I would encourage people to ask. Do we need to upgrade this fuse box we have?
Your
And how
breaker.
much?
Yeah. And
Breaker
Mike, you
box, yeah.
have to do that as well, Mike and Lucy?
You know, we had a 200 amp service to begin with, and I don't know why, but we did. And so we were lucky, but the wiring that was in the attic really needed to be replaced. And I think a lot of older homes, especially older than ours, really need to have new wiring, and that's an important part of the entire process. So there are workarounds for homes that are limited to like a 100 amp electrical panel, and you can buy what's called a smart panel that will it'll choose which things to send electricity to if you can only have so much, and it might turn your refrigerator down a little bit or off temporarily while you're cooking a meal or something like that. But there are certainly ways to deal with these things. And again, you just want to hire. I think you, just like in most things, if you hire a professional to help you, it's going to pay off. Doing it yourself is generally not recommended unless you have a lot of special skills.
And there is a nice rebate if you look at the Rewiring America for the electric panel. So that part you can get some help with for sure.
Yep, that's right. I just want to, there had been an earlier question about solar, and I think that participant has left, but I just want to shout out about solar. MNIPL can help you with solar. Brett and I have a lot of information, and we're glad to talk with you and answer questions. We're glad to get on a phone call, or you can email us. We're always available for that. But MNIPL does, when it comes to residential solar, we do really highly recommend a group called Solar United Neighbors. I didn't have a slide for this tonight, but I will send out a link for that. Solar United Neighbors puts together buyers groups that can get you a better rate from an installer. They also have great education, webinars, and information sheets that can really help you answer all the questions. They have staff that are highly knowledgeable and can work with you. So MNIPL has found that they're a great partner organization, and we recommend all our residential business goes that direction because they're so good at what they do. On the commercial side, Brett and I have helped a lot of congregations and nonprofits install solar. We can help your congregation with that. So I just wanted to note that question and appreciate that question. We didn't get to that early on, but while we're kind of coming towards the end, I want to make sure if there's any last questions, we catch that. Is there any other question in the chat, or anybody want to come off mute and ask a final question?
I'll make an observation if I may.
Please.
You're not going to get rich quick doing this, but you're going to do something really good for you. You're going to do something really good for your community, for the world. You're going to create jobs locally. You're going to reduce pollution that helps everybody around the world. It's a win-win-win, and it's not a way to make a gob of money in a hurry, but it's a way to invest in your children's future. And I think that's a really important plus to consider.
Yes.
I don't think anybody could say it better than that. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks everybody for being here. We'll send out a follow-up email with the recording and all the links so you have those tools. Again, Brett and I are available. Lee, Mike, Lucy, thank you so much for your time tonight and for being such champions for the climate. Really appreciate you all.
Thank you for all that you do.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Buff.
Take care, everybody, and have a good evening.
Yeah.
Good
Good
night.
night.